Hi, you are watching Revenge of Reddit. I tried to train my husband by denying him intimacy until he did what I wanted. Now he wants a divorce. What can I do? 5 years ago, I met the perfect man. Yes, literally perfect. The kind of man we all see in those cheesy romantic movies on Netflix. Tall, handsome, intelligent, loving, and, to top it off, incredibly attentive. I'm not bragging, but from the moment I met him, I knew I had won the lottery in love, something few women can say these days. Our relationship was so perfect that I sometimes wondered if it was real, or if I was dreaming with my eyes open. At first, everything was wonderful. We understood each other without needing to say much. We shared everything. From interests to goals, and even small everyday problems were easy to solve because we always did it together. We never fought over nonsense or had unnecessary drama. In fact, we used to laugh at couples who fought and made up every 5 minutes. Our intimacy was also out of this world, spontaneous, fun, and natural. I truly had nothing to complain about. Well, at least until a few weeks ago. It all started when I decided to join some free courses offered by the municipality in my city. The idea was simply to socialize a little. I had already been living here for a couple of years since I moved to be with him, but I never had a real chance to make friends. Everything changed when I joined these courses and met a small group of women who seemed very nice. We became friends almost immediately, sharing experiences, going out for coffee after class, and of course, talking about our husbands. At first, it all seemed pretty innocent. We simply enjoyed chatting about everyday things. But little by little, the conversation became spicier and bolder. During one of our talks, one of the girls happily mentioned that she had managed to train her husband to do whatever she wanted by using intimacy as a reward. At first I laughed, thinking it was just a joke or an exaggeration. But when I saw the others nodding in agreement, I was surprised and, honestly, a bit intrigued. One of them, Lorena, the boldest in the group, bragged about how she got her husband to buy her an expensive purse she had wanted for months. She told us, with a mischievous smile, that she simply refused to give him any action for an entire week until he, desperate, gave in to her whim. Another friend, Andrea, claimed that she got her husband to completely remodel their kitchen, an enormous expense he didn't want to do. Her strategy was to offer special intimacy every time he made some progress. According to her, her husband didn't last even 2 weeks before giving in and starting the renovations. I was a little shocked, but I must admit I was intrigued too. I thought maybe it wasn't so bad, and I could try it just once, just for fun. Besides, they kept insisting, saying things like, "Come on, all women do it. It makes life easier. It's normal. If you can take advantage, you should." Honestly, I started feeling a bit pressured. After all, these were my first friends in this country, and I didn't want to be left out of the group by seeming too innocent or moralistic. So, out of curiosity, I decided to try it. The first time was something small. I wanted a necklace I'd been eyeing for a while. Normally, my husband would have agreed quickly, but this time, I wanted to put into practice what I had learned from my friends. I casually hinted that there would be a special reward if he indulged me, and to my surprise, he gladly accepted. It was fun, and I admit I felt powerful and satisfied with the result. The next day, my friends were thrilled for me, celebrating my small victory, as if I had won a war. I began to feel that I could really get more out of this technique. Encouraged, my friends pushed me to try even bigger things, assuring me that this was how you build a relationship where both win. With each attempt, the demands went up a level. The next thing I tried was asking him for a weekend at an expensive hotel he had been resisting. I told him clearly there would be no intimacy until I had a confirmed reservation. At first, he was a little surprised, but he gave in again. The girls were fascinated with me, and I finally felt like I was part of the club. However, inside me, a strange discomfort began to grow. I wasn't sure this was as fun as they claimed. As days went by, I noticed my friends were pushing things further and further with their husbands, and that started to worry me. One of them bragged about getting a brand new truck just by withholding intimacy for an entire month. Another openly said she now had total control of her husband's finances thanks to this technique. I started to feel insecure because that wasn't what I wanted. My husband was a wonderful man, and I didn't need to manipulate him to get things. But again, I felt that group pressure to keep playing along. My last test was going big, something he really didn't want to do, changing our car. He was convinced it was an unnecessary expense, but I insisted and once again used intimacy as leverage. This time, however, my husband's reaction was completely different. For the first time, I saw him truly upset, offended, even hurt by my attitude. Honestly, I know my husband isn't stupid. He never has been. From the beginning, when I started this so-called training, I noticed he accepted it with a hint of humor, almost as if he saw it as an innocent game between us. At first, he seemed entertained by the dynamic, and I thought everything was under control. But the more I did it, the more obvious it became that he was beginning to feel strange. There were several occasions when his look was different, less cheerful and more uncomfortable, as if he were wondering why I needed to resort to such odd tactics when before we simply talked things through. Finally, when it became clear what I was doing, the inevitable happened. One day, I pushed too far, insisting about the car, and that's when he exploded. I remember perfectly the way he looked at me. It was a mix of disappointment and anger that I had never seen in his eyes before. It hurt me deeply, but instead of backing down, I made the biggest mistake. I defended myself in the worst way possible. He looked straight at me and said, "Seriously? Now you're using sex as a weapon to manipulate me. Do you think I'm an idiot you can control like that?" I clumsily tried to justify myself, saying something like, "Honey, relax, it was just a joke, something I read somewhere. Don't take it so seriously." But he shook his head, his expression hardening. "A joke? Do you really think playing with my feelings and treating me like your toy is funny? You're making me feel used. This is not who we are. This is not us." Hearing him say that made me panic. I didn't want to admit I had damaged something between us. I was so ashamed that instead of acknowledging my mistake, I lashed out even harder. "See? This is why we can't even talk anymore. Everything offends you. Everything bothers you. I don't even recognize the fun man I fell in love with." He stayed silent for a few seconds, clearly hurt by my words, until he finally answered firmly. "I don't recognize the woman I fell in love with either. And if you keep behaving like this, the best thing will be to divorce." It was the first time I felt that my husband, who had always been there to support me, didn't understand me at all. The word divorce echoed in my head as something unreal. I never thought our marriage could get to that point, especially over something that started as a game. After that argument, we spent several days practically ignoring each other. I tried to go back to being the same as before, but the tension was still there. Absurdly, instead of fixing things, I made another huge mistake. I tried to manipulate him again. I naively believed that if I showed him I still had control, we could return to normal, that he would calm down and understand it was just a couple's dynamic. But this time, it didn't work at all. He stopped me cold, looking at me with sadness and frustration, and said clearly, "Enough. Seriously. This isn't you. I feel like you're not the same woman I loved anymore. If this is going to continue, then we're done." I was completely confused and hurt. I thought he was overreacting. I refused to accept my responsibility. So at the next meeting with my friends, I decided to tell them everything that had happened, hoping for some kind of support or useful advice. But instead, their reaction shocked me even more. They told me something I never expected to hear. Maybe he's not the one, girl. Look, if you want, we can introduce you to someone else. A friend of ours has always been interested in you. We just never told you before because it was clear you loved your husband too much. But now that he's showing his true colors, maybe you could give yourself a chance with someone who truly values you." I was stunned. At first I felt offended and firmly said no. "Girls, please. I love my husband. I can't do that to him." They looked at me as if I were naive for insisting on repairing my marriage, but I wasn't ready to give up. However, to my own shame, deep down, a small part of me felt curious. For the first time since we married, I briefly imagined what it would be like to be with someone else. Someone who might not confront me so much. Someone who might be easier to handle. Thinking I could use that idea to regain my husband's attention and interest, I came up with a desperate, absurd plan. I decided to start dressing up more, wearing more provocative clothes, and going out more often with my friends, hoping he would think there was someone else, and somehow, that would motivate him to step up and win me back. Yes, now that I say it out loud, I realize how stupid it sounds. But at that moment, it seemed like a good idea. And with the constant approval of my circle of friends, it felt like nothing could go wrong. Of course, everything went exactly the opposite. My husband didn't get jealous or remotely interested in winning me back. Quite the contrary. He became even more distant and disappointed. One day, he finally confronted me and asked directly if there was someone else. He did it with such calm and coldness that a chill ran down my spine. That's when I saw clearly the damage I had caused with my stupid games. I confessed there was no one else, that I just wanted to get his attention, that I wanted us to go back to how we were before. But he, with sadness in his eyes, replied, "I don't know if that's possible after all this. I don't even know what to trust anymore. I don't even know who you are now." So here I am, now confused, ashamed, and desperate. How could I turn a perfect relationship into something so broken and complicated? I know I ruined everything, and I need honest advice on how to fix this disaster before it's too late. It's been a few weeks since my last post here on Reddit, and honestly, things haven't gone at all as I hoped. I don't even know where to start, so I'll try to tell everything step by step, though it hurts to admit the mistakes I've made lately. First, I want to thank everyone for the comments I received on my previous post. Some of you were pretty harsh, saying things like, I destroyed my marriage because of my immaturity, but others tried to understand me and gave me honest advice on how to repair the damage I had caused. The truth is, I felt I had to do something urgently, because I was really watching my life fall apart. In all this confusion, I decided to talk to my friends again. I thought they might give me some useful advice on how to reconcile with my husband, but I was completely wrong. Far from helping me, they recommended I do exactly the opposite of what you all advised here on Reddit. They told me I had to act as if I were the offended one, play the victim, because supposedly that way he would come crawling back to apologize. They said it was just a matter of holding firm until he gave in. According to them, showing myself hurt and pulling away emotionally was the best strategy to win him back. Now I realize how absurd their suggestions were. Since we still live in the same house, the situation has become quite uncomfortable. After our last fight, I moved into the guest room. It's not that he explicitly asked me to, but his coldness was so unbearable that it felt like the only way to survive mentally. The worst part is that if we formally separate, I'd have to return to my country, since I have no family here. And to make matters worse, my husband has been the only financial support since I moved in with him. Going back to my country would mean my husband would have to pay for my plane ticket, something that feels humiliating. The other option would be to ask my parents to send me money, but the idea of that makes me feel even more ashamed. I don't want to imagine their disappointment when they learn the reason my marriage ended, especially since my husband has always been such an exemplary man. So, for now, we remained stuck in this strange limbo, separated, but still living together. In the middle of this emotional mess, I made the worst decision possible. Do you remember how my friends mentioned a friend of theirs who was interested in me? Well, a few days ago, in a moment of desperation, and probably driven by my wounded pride, I agreed to go out with him. I'm not proud of it, but I wanted to feel desired again, even if just for a moment, and maybe forget about the chaos I had caused in my marriage. The date was at a simple coffee shop. The guy was attractive, I admit, but from the very first moment I noticed his intentions were superficial. He didn't seem interested in really knowing me. He just wanted to talk shallowly, flirt, and see if he could get something quickly. I knew exactly what he wanted, but at that moment I was so disappointed in myself, so desperate to feel something again, that I agreed when he directly invited me to a hotel after coffee. I won't go into much detail because it's not worth remembering, but I can say that after that day, I never heard from him again. Literally, he disappeared from my life the moment we left there. My friends later confirmed, with awkward laughter, that he told them there was no chemistry, and that's why he decided not to see me again. To be honest, that hurt me deeply. Even though I knew I shouldn't have done it, at least I expected that encounter to make me feel less miserable. But no, it only made me feel emptier. The worst of all is that I felt so guilty about what I had done that I tried once again to approach my husband, to fix things, this time with sincerity and real regret. But he didn't want to hear anything from me. I told him I was willing to do whatever it took to save our relationship, but his response was devastating. I'm sorry, but I don't trust you anymore. You destroyed the most valuable thing we had, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to see you the same way again. Hearing that was devastating. I realize now more than ever that I ruined something wonderful by following stupid, shallow advice from people who clearly knew nothing about having a healthy relationship. And worse, I realize I did it for no reason at all. I had a happy marriage. I had a husband who loved me deeply, and I threw it all away trying to play with something I didn't understand. Now I'm at this point, trapped in a foreign country, in a house where I'm no longer welcome and completely alone, because those supposed friends only made things worse with their terrible advice. Now I know I should never have listened to them, and I should have trusted what I had at home instead of trying to turn my relationship into something it wasn't. I'm writing this not only to vent, but also to warn other women who might be considering listening to similar advice. Value what you have before you lose it over nonsense. Right now, I don't know what to do. I feel desperate and lost, and the only thing I wish is to turn back time and not ruin my marriage. But since that's impossible, all I can do is accept my mistakes and try to move forward, even though I have no idea how. Do you think there's still a chance to win my husband back, or is this completely over? I really need your advice now more than ever. Well, here I am again. This time at the airport, with my life packed into a single suitcase, waiting for a flight that will leave in a few hours to take me back to my parents. I am officially divorced. Yes, just as you read. What started as a perfect marriage ended up becoming this, and honestly, I still can't believe it. My husband finally decided to divorce me. To be honest, I tried until the very last moment to fix things between us, but he was already sure of what he wanted. He told me he had lost trust in me, and that our relationship no longer made sense. That hurt so much, especially because I loved him deeply, and I still feel like we could have resolved things more calmly. However, I suppose he had already made up his mind, and the only thing I could do was accept it. I must admit that, despite everything that happened, he behaved like a gentleman until the very end. I don't know if I ever mentioned it clearly here, but since I moved with him to his country, I stopped working and he became the only financial support in the house. That's why, when we agreed on the divorce, one of my biggest worries was how I would return to my country without having to ask my parents for help, something that would have been incredibly humiliating for me. But my husband solved that for me. He told me he would cover the cost of the plane ticket and make sure I could return safely to my parents. He had no legal obligation to do so, but he did it anyway. That gesture, though kind, also hurt me deeply, because it symbolized the definitive end of what we had built together. Before leaving for the airport, we had our last conversation, probably the most uncomfortable and painful of all. I told him I was sorry things had ended this way, that I regretted listening to so much bad advice, and especially for trusting the wrong people. He listened patiently, and although he was serious and distant, his response left me somewhat calmer. Look, honestly, I want you to be happy. I hope you return to your family and can start over from scratch. I hold no grudges. I just wish the best for you. It was in that moment that I understood there was no turning back, but at least I knew he didn't hate me, and that was a small comfort. I thanked him for the years we had shared, and once again apologized for allowing other people to negatively influence our relationship. It was uncomfortable to say it, because admitting I was so easily influenced also meant admitting that maybe I was naive to believe those so-called friends really had good intentions toward me. And here is where I want to be clear. Was it them, those supposed friends I met at the municipal courses, who ruined everything? Or was it at some point that I let myself be carried away by their advice? But how was I supposed to know they were leading me so badly? I only wanted to fit in, to have new friends, and they took advantage of that to put absurd ideas into my head about manipulating my husband with things that should never have been used as a game. Now that I'm sitting here at the airport, I see it all much more clearly. I suppose that trying to fit in a foreign country made me let my guard down, trusting the wrong people, and, as a result, ending up divorced and with nothing. My husband was always a good person to me, and although it hurts that he didn't want to give us another chance, I recognize that, at some point, he was also a victim of these external manipulations. I know I can't change the past, but I can warn anyone reading this. Be very careful with the advice you accept from others. Sometimes, the ones who smile the most or seem to support us are precisely those who can destroy our happiness. Today, I leave with that bitter lesson learned. I don't want to blame myself anymore. I didn't ruin this alone. If I hadn't listened to those absurd pieces of advice, I would still be happily married.